welcome to our introduction to reporting. What we're going to talk about today is, not much, but we'll talk a little discussion on really what a report is, its requirements, and then start jumping into the components of EasyVista and start talking about the parent query, how we gather all of the data, and then how we filter and display that data with filters and views. And then we'll have a quick discussion on just how to distribute these reports, how people can access this data. So let's start off with what is a report? And I asked Google, what's a report? And Google told me it's a structured document that presents information, data, or findings on a specific topic or subject matter. But to get a little bit more detailed on what we're concerned about, have you guys heard of that new AI, ChatGPT? Well, I asked ChatGPT, hey, what's an ITSM report? And it's basically a report, it's a report that reports off of the data for the processes that we support with EasyVista. With incident management, we might report on your IT backlog or your incident backlog, as well as your service utilization for your service requests. Change management reports are very important, especially those CAB reports or those collision reports, so to make sure that you're not stepping on each other's toes with different changes. Problem management reports, maybe some availability reports on your assets and CIs, as well as your SLAs. Are you meeting those service level agreements with your customers? So some basic reports are some general examples of the types of reports that we're looking at when we're looking at the data with EasyVista. Some of the benefits of reporting. I don't think I'm going to go through all of these. I think you guys realize the benefits of reporting, but really, what does it help us do? It helps us make smart decisions, really. And I don't know if some of you are in some industries like the finance industry or the health industry, you might come across regular annual audits that you have to adhere to. So reporting is a great way to get data out of EasyVista. And again, here are some of the benefits and why we like reports. Now, when we're talking about reports, I kind of think of them in a couple of different ways. One is we just dump the data out there. We get the details of each ticket. The title, the data was open, the time it was open, who it's for, the SLA, maybe the priority, the urgency. Well, who looks at that data? We can use it for detailed analysis, but a lot of times we use that to share data with other systems as well. So oftentimes we see that in a CSV format. But when we're looking at reports that are for like your management type folks, well, they don't necessarily always need to see all those details. So we have the ability to create these summary type reports with charts, with graphs, built off of KPIs for analysis. So again, I just kind of, when I think about reporting, I just kind of think of it in a couple different ways. And it really depends on, who's looking at it or what's the intent of the data. And as you're continuing to think about that report, what are the requirements that we need to adhere to? And with this little graph or this little image right here, I try to associate, maybe a requirement with maybe something in EasyVista, an EasyVista component that you can start thinking about. Like, who's accessing the data? Well, we just talked about that may determine what type of report that you're writing. Are we dumping the data or doing some kind of a summary? What data set are we using? What is the data? Well, that's your parent query that pulls all the data for you. How much of that data do we want to use? Well, that's your filtering. And you're going to also want to talk about scheduling. If this is an automated report that's pulling thousands and thousands of rows of data, well, you might not want to run that in the middle of the day when all of your users are on the system. You might want to hold off and run that in the middle of the night, maybe of your non-peak hours. What fields do I need? Again, that's your parent query that joins all of the tables where you can gather all that data, and the view, we'll see all this, the view presents that data and displays that to the user. How will it be grouped and sorted? Again, that's the view, and the frequency, again, that's your schedule. Is this an automated report? But again, users have the ability to manually run reports on an ad hoc basis as well. So again, just a little chart here, a little image to, as you're thinking about requirements, start thinking about EasyVista and what we're going to be looking at and how we're going to be constructing this report. And I think this will be obvious once we get into the demonstration. Do we always need a new report? Well, not necessarily. Are we using the same parent query? Are we going after the same data? Maybe it's the same parent query, and all we need to do is maybe refine a filter, modify a filter a little bit, or even create a new view to display a different set of data or different set of fields that are coming from those records that the parent query pulls. We can always set, anything as a favorite, even if you set it with your filter and view, even if you sort on a column header, save that as a favorite. It'll be saved in that way. So the next time you need to access it, it'll already be with the same view, the correct filter, and sorted the way that you want to. This last note here, the one thing that I want to say though is, when you get into that filter and list or filter and view drop down, yes, maybe you don't need to create another report. All you need to do is create another filter and or view. But if that list gets too long, just remember the user experience. Think about the user. Is it going to be easier for them to scroll down 20 different filters and 20 different views to select the right combination? Or would it be easier for them to go to the report list and look at a report that's titled, incidents by category or something to that effect? So again, you don't necessarily always need to create a new report, but I always like to think of the user experience. What's going to be a little bit easier for them to access that data? Now, I don't have the chat up, but I'm going to bring it up and make sure I don't have any questions so far. Lewis, are we looking okay?
We actually do have a couple of questions. Okay. I'm not Lewis, but one question was, can reports be scheduled to run automatically and sent to specific people?
Yes, they can.
Answered it. Yep.
Oh, yes. Yep, saw that.
Yep, using a report schedule, and that's a very handy thing. And again, think about the scheduling of those reports. I don't know what type of reports you're thinking about running, but if it's going after a lot of data, it could have an impact on the system. I'm not saying it will, I'm just saying it has the potential to, so you may want to think about running those on hours. Was there anything else that I missed?
No.
Okay.
The Q&A, yeah. So thank you, Donald, for answering that already.
All right, so let's jump into the parent query. All right, and this is really the heart of your report right here. The parent query defines a set of standardized data retrieved from the database for working on a given theme. I pulled that out of our wiki, all right? Really what it is, it's a series of tables that are joined together that's pulling the data that you're looking for. It starts with a primary table, and you can add or join additional tables or SQL views to go after the data that are being held within those views and or tables. Now, when I say views, I mentioned views earlier where we can display what different fields, different columns from the data that we're reporting on. A SQL view is something different from an EasyVista view or a report view. A SQL view is really behind the scenes, is something that's configured in SQL, And it's data that's gathered from a number of different tables that are put together in this view that just makes it a little bit easier for you to access and it's in a readable format. Okay. I think I see a couple questions coming by. I'm going to ignore those, and Louis, you let me know if there's any questions that you'd like me to address to the group. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, just lost my train of thought there for a second. Okay, so again, don't get in when I'm talking about SQL views where you can join them with your primary table or add them to your parent query. That's very different from just the views that we're going to be looking at later to present that data. And I will be jumping in and we'll go through a demonstration of all of this. I'd just like to get through a couple of slides and then we can jump in and we'll start working on our report. Okay. Now, when you're working with parent queries, there's oftentimes you're going to see that, oh, hey, I don't quite have the field that I want to present, or it doesn't quite grab all of the data that I need. So you'll find that you need to add or modify the query. Well, the one thing that I want to make you aware of is parent queries can be used in a lot of different places within EasyVista, and you could affect something else. All right. These are the areas within EasyVista that we see parent queries used. They're used on forms. They're used within grids. Workflows use parent queries, as well as alerts, mail templates, and purge archives. So again, you just have to be very careful when you add a table. Depending on the join or depending on what table you add, you could affect how many records are being pulled back by that parent query. Again, we have the ability to modify parent queries, an existing parent query, but like I said, you don't know what you're affecting. You'll see that we have the ability to copy a parent query. If there's a parent query, we know that's grabbing the data, but I want to add a table and a field, and just to make sure I'm adding I'm not affecting anything else that this parent query is being used at, we have the ability to copy it and make a specific query for this report. You also have the ability to create a new parent query from scratch. Sometimes that's necessary, but I'm to the mindset of, if we don't need to recreate the wheel, why do we have to? So if we have something that's out there, I like this copy option where we can use a base and then modify it and enhance it for our needs. Okay. Now, when we're adding tables to our parent query, what we're really doing is we're creating SQL joins in the background. And we see this default. This is taken out of our wiki, and you also see a little warning message, a little message when you're creating these joins or adding these tables as well, because you have the ability to select an outer join or an inner join. Now, this is very key. We default to an outer join because it displays all rows from the main table, even if there are no matching matches with the join table or SQL view. If you select inner join, it could affect the number of records that parent query was pulling back. And like I said before, you don't necessarily know. It's hard to determine where all of these queries are being used. So in my mind, it's better to be safe than sorry and copy that query if we're going to be making any modifications to it for this specific report. Ken, I see you asked a question. When you add tables or fields to the parent query, are you able to remove them if you find that you don't need them? Yes and no. And this is, again, one of the pitfalls, or I don't know about pitfalls, but things that you really have to watch out for with parent queries and modify them. You can remove a field, but you can't remove a table. And by adding a table, that's what's going to affect or could affect that count. So again, make a copy of it. If you're modifying the existing one, guys, back it up. You can go and export an existing query, save it as a file on your PC or in a shared repository that you guys have. But if you're going to modify an existing query, guys, please, please, please go and make a backup. Okay? Ken, I hope that answered your question there. Yes, I will be demoing this as well. And yeah, we'll jump in there and I'll show you how to add a table. I'll show you how to copy. I'll even show you export real quick, okay? Now, one of the questions is that we always get is, what parent query do we use? Well, that's a hard question to answer right off the bat, but it obviously determines it's based on your requirements. But in a nutshell, this is where a lot of confusion comes into play for a lot of questions that come into support. You know, do we start with SD request, or do we use a parent query that's aimed at the AM action table? Well, again, I can't answer that for you because I don't know what report you want to write. But when you're looking at SD request, that's the ticket. That's the main ticket. That's the title, description of the ticket, who this ticket is reported or requested for. You know, when does it need to be done? We see the CI, what's affected, and its current status. Where is it in its life cycle? Now, the actions or the activities is where all the work is being done. So if you want details on who is doing each specific item, because there could be multiple actions for one single request for one single incident. If you want details on those actions, you go after the AM action table. And the AM action table can also determine how long each of those activities took. So again, we have to think about the intent of the report, but this is a big confusion. We get a lot of questions on what tables to go after what data. Okay. Any more questions on the parent query? Louis, are we doing okay?
In the Garrick, in the Q&A session, Jeremy Vanowich just asked if they want to change the parent query from, the creating it inner join versus, left outer join. Can it be changed?
No. That's another thing that you really have to be watch out for. And I'll stress again, back up an existing query or copy it and make its own version. Because yes, if you add it by mistake or add it the wrong way, the only way to get out of it is to create a new one and use the new query. So yeah, that's just something you really have to be aware of. I'm sorry, I'm catching Matt's little comment in the chat here. I think that's thank you, Matt. That's a very worthwhile comment to take a look at, guys, in the chat. Anything else, Louis?
No, at the moment it's okay. And someone was asking that, can they get a copy of our data schema?
Oh yeah, we can provide a copy of the data model. Stephanie, if you're listening, we'll provide that to you guys. So hopefully we can include that with the slides in tomorrow. Okay.
Sounds good. I'll make a note of it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so our parent query, again, I'm sorry.
Someone asked about, here James asked, oops, I can't scroll down. I'm curious if it's going to GUI based like Crystal Reports was, or command line to set.
Where is that?
It's at 1021.
I'm curious if it's going to GUI based like Crystal Reports was, or command line to set these up. honestly, I can't really comment on the future or what to be expected on the interface for that parent query or any, yeah, unfortunately, us in support, we don't have a lot of insight into what's up and coming or what's currently in development besides what's been put out there for us to test. And I haven't seen any changes in that. Lewis, have you seen anything regarding that?
No, I have not.
Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, let's check on time. I think we're doing pretty good here. Let's talk a little bit about filters and views. Now we talked about our parent query. That's really the bulk of the data that we're going after. And we can kind of filter or modify that data for our report using filters and views. Now, a filter is used, I can grab this out of our wiki. Again, a filter is used to extract a subset of data using selected criteria. Now, there's two ways you'll see when we get into this. There's two ways. We do have a nice visual mode or nice graphical user interface where it's not quite drag and drop, but you can select the fields and the values and it'll construct those search clauses for you. But for those of you who are very comfortable within SQL, you can go into the advanced mode and you can really make that search or make these filters a lot more finite and a lot more detailed. So know that you have that option, okay? Now filters can be static, meaning we can hard code values, or we can present fields for users to select what values for the filter to use, such as like a date range. You know, maybe if you're going after closed incidents, you don't necessarily want to go after all the closed incidents in your database every single time, but you can present a date range to them to kind of filter that data so it doesn't have to bring back so much data every single time the reports run. Your views, well, that is the display of the data, okay? Typically it's in a grid, you know, where we see rows of records with columns of fields for each of those records. But know that we also have the option to group them a little, you know, we can group the data in different ways, we can sort the data in different ways, and by doing that, those groupings, we have the ability to display that data within charts and graphs as well, which is really nice. So those are those nice reports for your management type folks. You know, they can get a glance, you know, get status of their organization or the environment without having to read all of the details of every single record. You know, the last bullet in here, which is really nice, this is just a little point here. You know, it can also be used in Google Maps for geolocation services to display markers on a map using information such as location, name, address, city, and country. And I have a screenshot of an app and service apps that was created that uses this geolocation. All right, you can see all of these tickets on the form right here are for the area of Miami. Now, if we had our locations kind of detailed out, you know, for different addresses, maybe different, you know, physical locations within Miami, we could display those markers where each ticket or the selected ticket is needs to be worked or has been reported from. But this is just kind of a nice option. We don't see this much, but I just kind of wanted to show it to you. This was all using a report, based off of a report. All right, so let's jump into the tool now. Were there any questions on the slides? Okay.
I don't see any new questions, but let's give people a few seconds just in case they're typing.
Okay, while they're doing that, I'm going to switch my screen share here.
Okay, Maxwell asked, how do we automatically sort a specific field when we pull up the report?
Oh, you can sort, once the report's up, you can sort, excuse me, on any column header. You just click on the column header and we can sort on that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. What am I sharing right now?
Let's see, modify an existing report. There's like a slide, and then your next slide, and then your talking points. Slide 20 of 23. It's like your PowerPoint.
Oh.
A presenter view.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And while Garrick is doing that, I just want to thank you guys again for joining today's call. And later, I'm prepping you now, just so that you know that later we'll be asking you for other topics for future webinars. What else do you want to learn? We did also put a poll in the newsletter, which hopefully you all got last week, and then I think we resent it to people who didn't open last week's newsletter. We resent that today or sometime this week. So hopefully you guys got it.
Okay, do you see EasyVista now?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. All right. Let's jump into some reporting here, okay? First, I want to jump in and just create a new report, and I want to just show you some of the, just introduce you to the parent query. So to create a new report, we have to go into administration. So I'll click on my global menu, go into administration and into reports, and we'll expand reports and go into reports. Now we have the ability to save reports under a specific folder. And if we wanted to create more folders, if we look over on the left-hand side again under the reports section, I'm going to go ahead and click on reporting folders. You'll see there's the reporting folders that have been created. If I want to create a new one, I'll just create a new one right now. And I'll just name it webinar. All right, I'll say finished. And now we can see I have my webinar folder, which currently has 0 reports in it. So now if I go back to my reporting section, notice you don't see webinar right now because there are no reports in there. But if I click new to start a new report, I'm going to jump right back down to the folder name really quick. If I do the lookup on there, we do see the new folder that I created. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and make sure that this new report gets saved in my webinar folder. All right, and I'll just name this webinar 1. Okay, always give it a name. Comments, guys, is not a required field, but I'll just say this. It's always nice to leave some breadcrumbs on maybe who created this, when this was created, the purpose of it, you know, because you may leave this position and someone may inherit this system and not really know what this report was intended for. So leaving breadcrumbs is always nice. Okay. As we're going down this new report form, you know, you'll see that the required fields, just like everything else in EasyVista, has an asterisk in front of it. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and give it a theme. And our theme, this is basically how EasyVista organizes your reports. All right, I'm going to open up a new tab right here. So I'm going to go up to my tab heading and I'm going to right click on my tab and click duplicate. And that's kind of nice because it opens up a new tab within the same session. All right, what I wanted to show you really quick is the different themes. If we look at the selection on themes, we see asset management, design, discovery, operation, and so on. This is where they get organized. Operation in operation reports, transition under reports, asset and configuration under reports, required fields. So for this report, we're going to be going after actions. We're going to use an actions parent query. So I'm going to actually just stash this in the operations theme. All right. Now here's where we get to the parent query. I can use this drop down and see all of the parent queries that are available, currently available, either out of the box or maybe ones that I created in this VM. Okay. I know I want to go after actions. All right, so I'm going to select actions, and we can go ahead and type into the field, and it will search for us. So I'm going to select actions. If we want to take a look at this parent query, we can click on the pencil. We can see what fields are available, have already been defined or added to the parent query. Anything you see down here with the red X typically will mean it's been manually added from the out of the box. That's a good indicator right there that this query has been modified. If we want to see what tables have been added or joined to this query, we can go ahead and click. Well, the easiest way I think is to click Add Field, because then you'll see all the tables that have already been added or joined. You can see there's quite a few with this actions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit Previous. And I'm just going to cancel out of here really quick. I don't want to save anything because I know I'm going to be making a modification, or I want to make a modification to this. So there's two things I can do. I could either modify this query directly, and if I choose to do that, I want to take a backup first. So again, before I modify it, I'm going to go to my other tab that would for the same session. For me, the easiest way is to go to this little filter menu, search the field right here, and I'm going to type export. And you'll see it'll bring up all the export options. I'm going to select export queries. All right. I want to export this and back this up as a file and save it on my, on my, in a shared repository on my PC, wherever. I'm going to look for actions. So I'll just type actions. Actually, you know what? A percent is a wild card, to let you know. Always kind of, I don't know, safe to do that. Or what you could do is you could use this little filter icon, as most of you know, and just search for any of them that have the word action in it. Now, we have a number of them. Remember, on our report, I selected actions. Let's look for actions. We have all actions, actions backlog, HD_actions, PR_actions. I don't see actions, all right? I want you to notice the prefix though. When you're working with the report, you won't see this when you're selecting it from this drop down, but when you're working with the report, generally there are going to be these ones prefixed with reporting. So this is the reporting_actions is the one I want to back up right now. So to do this, I'm just going to select it to highlight it. Click the export button up in the upper right corner, and this will allow me to download this file to my PC, and we can see it has been saved in my downloads folder. There it is right there. I can copy that, I can save that into a backups folder that I have somewhere, but now I have a copy of this query before I've made any changes to it. Okay, I'll go ahead and hit finish. I'll go back to my previous tab where the report is. That is one way. Another way to do this, if you want to make a separate copy of this query to use specifically for this report, you can use this nice little duplicate icon right here. If we click that, it'll say, what do we want to name it? I'll just go ahead and keep the default of parentheses copy in here. Actually, oops. I'll say copy for webinar. We can save it. But notice we have to reselect it. Don't just blindly go and start editing because it's still the one that you originally selected. So we need to go down and now search for the one that we've just duplicated. Actions, copy for webinar. All right. Personally, I like to say finish just to go ahead and get it saved. You can see the webinar folder now does display with one report in it, which is the report that we just created. So I'll go ahead and use the pencil to edit the report. And we see it saved with the parent query that we selected. Now, what else does a report need? Will this run by itself? Well, it doesn't necessarily need a filter, but it doesn't know what to display. So I just want to go ahead and just get something out there really quick. I'm going to create a filter. Oftentimes we see one that says none. That'll get everything from the actions. You don't have to create this, but to create this none filter, you know, what I like to do, honestly, is I like to look for a required field, like creation date. Every record's got a creation date, and just say is not blank. All right, I'll click OK. I know that's going to get every record that this parent query pulls back. We also need a view. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit this plus button to create a new view. We'll just call this list. And then we can click on the magnifying glass to select which fields that we want to display. I'm going through this very quick. We will go back over through this. I just want to get these created very quickly for us. So to display fields, we do see that we have the third column over here is display. And if and when you see an item that's checked, that's what's going to be displayed in the search results. So just to get something out there, I'm going to go ahead and display the number. I'm going to put that at the top. So notice I selected number. This first column is order. This is how you can order those columns. If I check order for number, I have the ability to insert that everywhere. I'm just going to move it to the top just so I can see it. Okay. I'm going to select the number, maybe the creation date, maybe the priority, and the, I don't know, the title? How about the title? Okay. Again, you see that they're not grouped together. If we wanted to group them together, we can just select them and move them up to the area that we want to see them. All right. And now we can order these fields and present the columns in the order that we would like to see them. I'd like to, I want to put priority right after number. Whoop, sorry, wrong spot. Let me switch that. And I'll click OK. All right, we have our basic filter and we have our basic view created. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to add. I wanted to add the workflow, because for these, I want to know which workflow is being used or has been used for each record. So I'll click OK. We'll say finish. Now I want to run this report. Can I run it from here, from admin and reports? Unfortunately, I can't. I can create one, I can edit it, and I can delete it, but I can't run it from this admin's dialog. I need to go to the folder or to the area where I set the theme. So I'm going to go to Operation, enter reports. And remember, I saved it in the webinar folder. There's our new webinar 1 report. Now I can click on this report to run it. And we can see the columns of data that I selected. We can see the number. We can see the priority, the creation date, the workflow, and its title. Looks like these ones at the top don't have a workflow and title. Someone asked earlier about sorting data. Any of these columns, we can sort by any of these columns just by clicking on the column header. I'll click on workflow once and it sorts by, I believe, ascending. I think it defaults, and then the second time it'll go to descending. Now we can see which workflows, if it had a workflow assigned to it, has been, or that each record was running against.
Hey, Garrick, I'm going to pause you for a minute.
Sure.
So I think something that James had mentioned is, I think Maxwell's question, he was the one who asked about the sorting. I think Maxwell's question is more, how do you set which column sorts automatically by default and which direction, ascending versus descending? I think someone mentioned that it might just be the first, it automatically sorts by the first column, but maybe you can clarify that?
Yes, it does. It automatically defaults to the first column. So unfortunately, we can't select another column to sort off of by default. Now, one thing that you can do, or if users run these reports quite often, rather than sorting off number, if I wanted to sort off priority, I can select priority to sort all the records by priority. And if I save this as a favorite, by going up to these 3 dots, to add to favorite, I can even modify the name, and I'll just say sorted by priority. I'll click OK. Now, let's just click on let's just get out of here real quick. Let's go into all incidents just to bring up another search. Now, if I go use my favorites, webinar 1 sorted by priority, I can go ahead and select that, and you can see that it's now presented in the way that I had saved it. So from the report configuration, we can only sort off of the first column, but again, users have the ability to save these as a favorite for the way that they would like to see the data every time they run the report. I hope that answers the question. Were there any others that I missed?
Lewis, do you want to address them? Because I'm not 100% sure that we're getting all of the Q&A answered.
Yeah. Garrick, at 32 minutes after the hour, Kai Mullins asked, is there an easy way to tell what parent queries are used in the form or interface?
In a form or an interface. Okay, let's go into there. Let's just go into an incident record. Okay, if I go ahead and display an incident, if I go up to these 3 dots, this ellipsis, and again, you need to have your rights, and all of you as admins, I'm sure, have the rights for this. We use the ellipsis and select edit form. You'll see up here, this is using HT incidents. I know this says dialog HT incidents. It could be a little confusing.
Garrett, we're not seeing that form that pops up.
It's because it opens up in a new window. I'm going to have to stop sharing and reshare here. Hold on a second. All right, maybe we'll just share this big guy here. Okay. So again, we go up to we have a form up. If we go to these 3 ellipses, this button with the 3 dots, and select edit form, this will bring up a new window, which is the form configuration. Up in the upper left hand corner, I can see the form name, HD or dialog HT incidents. I know this is using the HD incidents query. All right. When we're, where was it? When we're looking at different form presentations, select another area, incident details. Notice when you go into incident details, it does have this field query, so we can see which query is being used for this form, HD incidents. I hope that helped. Kai, did that answer your question? Anything else, Lewis?
Yeah, I see at 36 minutes after the hour, Emmy Kelson asked, how do we get our new report folders to show up and be selectable to grant permissions in the profile?
Show up in... So for it to show up, remember, when I created that new folder, let me go into administration and report folder. Remember, we didn't see this webinar. We didn't see this webinar folder being displayed until I had something saved in there. All right, so when I went into a new report, yes, I did create a new folder. I'll just do this again. So if I create a new folder, we'll call it new folder, and we'll say finish. And if I go and create a new report, notice again, I don't see the new folder here, but once I create a report, and select that folder and save it within that folder, new folder. Let me pick a query real quick. And hit finish. Now we see the new folder called new folder show up with one report in it.
And Garrick, I think Emmy's question is to, under administration access profiles, will you now see webinar and new folder as an area that she can select and grant permission or take away permission? I don't think you can really get to that granularity though.
I don't think we can do that down to the folder, but Lewis, if you can note that question, we're going to take that as a takeaway.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I want to jump back into that reporting area that where I was working. And if you notice right here, I created some shortcuts for myself so I don't have to always click through the folders. So I'm just going to go ahead and look at my folders. I'm going to go to my webinar folder. And I am going to, there's two ways that I can edit this, guys. When I go through operations reports, I can run it, and I can run it, and I can go up to these three dots and I see it. Oh, you know what? I want to make some changes. I can easily go up here and hit edit and go to the edit dialog, or you have the pencil as well, and it'll just take you straight into that into the configuration dialog. So, two ways to get into the report configuration. Okay, for this report, for the list, notice I added the workflow. But what I also want to add is I want to see what closing workflow. That's the standard workflow that's used for all those incidents, but I just, for whatever reason, I want to know what closing workflow. I want to display that. So let's see if that field is available to us. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my parent query. I'm going to click the pencil. And first, I will review the fields that are already available. As I scroll down the list, I can see workflow is available. But let's continue to scroll. We're looking for closing workflow. As I scroll down through here, I actually know it's not in here. So I need to get that piece of data. All right, I can add the field. So if I click add field, I need to select what table do I want to pull these out of. Well, it's out of the SD workflow table. Do I see SD workflow in here? I do, but remember, we already saw the standard workflow. This join right here has been created for the standard workflow. We need to add a table and create a join to grab the data for the closing workflow. Okay, so let me hit previous page, and I want to go in, and this time I want to add a table. I want to create a join. So I'm going to select add table. Here's all the tables that have currently been added. Well, where am I going to join this from? Because do you guys remember, and I know your lines are muted, I don't expect you to answer, but where is the workflow defined? Where does the incident or request or change record get its workflow or closing workflow? Well, it gets it from the catalog item. All right, so let's look at SD catalog. SD catalog has already been joined to this query, and if we expand SD catalog, now we see what other tables that we have the ability to join to this query from SD catalog. I'm going to go down and look for SD workflow, because I know workflow, we want to display the closing workflow. We see 3 options for workflow. Which one do I select? Well, just kind of move over to the right and you can see what creates that join. The SD workflow.workflow ID field needs to equal the catalog workflow ID field. That's for the standard workflow. For your immediate workflow, you can see that's the second join. The workflow ID in the workflow table needs to match the immediate workflow ID in the catalog. Well, we want closing workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and select this third workflow table that joins based off of the workflow ID and the closing workflow ID. I'll select that, and it's going to give me the option to name it. If I hit OK, we already have a table that's named SD workflow within our query. Because I like to rename these to be a little bit meaningful so you know what data this is going after, why you added this table. So I'll just append it with closing. Okay, if I click OK, that table has now been added to this query. If I click Add Table and scroll to the bottom, I can see SD Workflow Closing has been added. But now I want to display data from that table. I want to display that closing workflow name. So now I want to add a field. If I click the add, I did that pretty quick, I'm sorry. If I click the add field button in the bottom right, I look for the table that I just added or just joined to this query. So I'll go down the bottom, I see SD workflow closing. If I expand it, I see all the, yes.
Sorry, someone asked if you could make make this full screen again, because it is a bit small.
Oh yeah, sure, not a problem.
Thank you so much.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right, apologies for that. I do have kind of a big monitor, so that would be a little small for you guys. Okay, where were we? We wanted to add the field. So again, I'm going to click Add Field. We can search for the table that we just added, SD Workflow Closing. And if we expand that, we can see all of the data fields that are available to display. We want to display the name of the closing workflow. I'm going to go ahead and click, well, I can select name EN for the English name, or I can select any of its languages if we support them. We can also select name _ $LNG, and that will display in the language that has been set for that user. Okay, so we'll go ahead and select it. We'll scroll to the bottom and notice it does get added as what we selected, but we have the ability to rename this, again, something that's meaningful to you. and to the users. Okay, so we'll say closing workflow. We'll go ahead and save that query. It's been saved, and now I want to display it. So if I go into the view that I've created, I can click the magnifying glass. Maybe? Yep. I can click the magnifying glass, and I can look for closing workflow. Here we go. And I can move it up to where I want to place it. I can do that and modify the existing view. I'm gonna hit previous right here and not really save that. Just like for the parent query where we had that duplicate icon when we first selected it, we have duplicate icons for our filters and for our views. So again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If for whatever reason we don't want to modify this existing one and just wanted to add a field for a second view, we can click duplicate. It'll create a copy. It just automatically defaults to the same name _ copy. We'll say list with closing workflow. And if we click the magnifying glass to add it or to edit it, now we can add closing workflow to this second view without affecting the original view. I'll click OK and finish. Let's just run it and test it and see if we were able to grab that closing workflow. So I'll click on the report to run it. Notice the view defaulted to list. I'm going to use the drop down and select list with closing workflow to look at my new view. We can see the table, the column's been added. But again, the first few rows don't have any data in it. So let's just sort this by descending and see if we have any values. There we go. We have our closing workflow, as well as our standard workflow. So in that little example right there, we were able to back up our parent query, or we actually made a copy of it, modified the copy of the parent query. Oops. We created a pretty basic filter, created a basic view, but then we were able to add to that and add the closing workflow without affecting the original view. So that was just, again, a quick rundown on how to add information or modify. Well, we kind of created this from you, but a little demonstration on modifying a parent query, filters and views. I also want to take, yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Louis in the QA area, Q&A area. While we're on this very topic, at O2, Rodney asked, was the new table joined with an inner join?
Oh, I'm sorry. I breezed right over that. My mistake right there. Let me go back into this edit of this report, and I'll go into the query. I'll say add table, and unfortunately, we don't know. All right, we don't know. But as we're adding tables, as I scroll to the bottom, I should have showed this to you. I apologize. Let's see. Maybe I want to add the immediate workflow this time. So I'm going to go back into catalog. I'm going to select, well, before I select immediate workflow, if we scroll down to the bottom right here, we can see that outer join is always selected as a default. Again, because you could lose records with an inner join, but if it's something, I don't know your requirement. If it is required, you have the ability to go down there and make that selection and then go select the table that you want to join. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to see what's been joined. But what's kind of nice here, I'm going to show you this real quick. I'm just going to go into, go into something else. Do you guys know the show statement command? If we go up to our URL, into our address bar, and at the end of the URL, type ampersand and show statement, equals yes, this should show us the SQL queries that have been sent to the database. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. When that happens, if you scroll to the bottom of whatever you're looking at, you'll see the SQL that's been issued to the database. So let's take a look and see what this shows. I actually don't really know. So let's run our report. So I'm going to run the report. If I scroll down to see what queries have been sent, let's see if we can figure out. Again, I've never really looked at this from a report standpoint. This is showing us, okay, based off the query ID, it's not really showing us the guts of the query there. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here's the query that was received by the database, and it's a lot to go through. If we were to go through this, you can see if it's been created as an inner or an outer join. I hope that helps. This, again, it'll be an effort to kind of look through this, but there is a way for you to go and see if it's been added as an inner or outer join. Not the straightforward way to go see it, but it looks like we can backdoor it and get there. Louis, did you have any other ideas on that? How to see that?
No, that's it. That's it. Show statement.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn show statement off because I don't want to see that. So I like to just make a menu selection because the URLs are generally shorter and it's easier for me to get to the end. It's just a Garrick thing. And so I'm going to say and show statement come on, type equals no. And that should turn it off for me. There we go. You see it's turned off. So I hope that helped. Anything else, Louis, before I show some examples?
Yeah. At 55 minutes after the previous hour, Robert P. says, who can see those folders and reports? All users or only you? 55 minutes after the previous hour. Robert P.
Well, again, we can control, permissions are done from the user profile perspective. So, user profiles. So if we go, I'm just going to select a user. I'm going to select admin. If we go down into operations, now you can go ahead and say, I don't want them to see operation type reports. And you can remove that, and remove its ability to do anything right there, or just remove it off the menu. You have the ability to do here. We have a takeaway question that we're going to do a little research and see if we can get down to the folder detail. I just don't know that off the top of my head. And I don't see it here.
No, I've never seen that granular level.
Oh, right here. So if I click on reports, again, I'm going to have to play with this. I hate to say anything that I'm not sure of. So we're going to play with this and kind of follow up with this question. But know that all your permissions are done through your user profile.
Great. Garrick, at 59-minute point of the previous hour, Sarah Schumacher asked, when a table is joined in the parent query and given an alias, is there a way in the GUI to see the non-alias database table name? So I think you partially answered it with the show statement, but if you have any other way to answer that question.
Yeah, the show statement is the easiest way to do it. Let's see. Like we added this ST workflow. You know, not really. If I were to just name this Jerry, we might not be able to know. Yeah, you know, in my history, I typically like to leave the name of the table that we're joining and append something that's meaningful as to why we're joining it. That's my practice. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to put a comment in there if they have a process that works well for them. But I think your naming convention really goes a long way with that.
Yeah.
All right. What I wanted to show you is, I'm sorry, anything else?
Just one last question. Yeah, at the 48 minute after the previous hour, Stefano asked, is there a way to share your current favorite reports to everyone?
To share your favorites. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think there's a way to export this. I mean, you can just direct people to it. I don't think there's a way to share it, though. All right. So, I have a couple of canned reports that I just wanted to show you with some features that we didn't necessarily go over when we were talking about specifically views. But I wanted to show you with this example. So in this example right here, we default to our typical view, which is a list view, right? We just dump some data out there. But we can also have the ability to group things by year with this, and I created a status breakpoint with this view. So notice it's grouped by year. So in 2017, we have 112 tickets. 2018, 3,500, 3,500 for 2019. But now we can kind of drill down into each of these years. And now we see it by its status. So for all of those tickets within that year, within 2018, here's a breakdown by status. And then if we wanted to see the details, we can drill down even more. All right, if we go into edit this and say, and look at the list group by year status breakdown, if I edit that, notice the first column I had is creation date. I wanted it to sort by creation date, but I grouped it by the year. You know what? I'm going to duplicate this column so I can rerun this. So we have a notice it's grouped by year. Right here, again, creation date, we can group by year, but I can also select any of these options if I wanted to group it by month, by year and month, by month only. You have a lot of options. I chose by year. And then the next column that I have selected was the status, and that's where we want to create that breakpoint. So again, once we select the year, we have a groupings by year. Once I select that, now we have our breakpoint if it's broken down by status. Oh, that wasn't a good one to select. And it gives us a nice quantity right there. Another example I wanted to show you, which was kind of nice, was we can say list with averages or with total averages, totals and averages. So notice totals and averages are based off of, we go into the configuration of this. Based off of our time to solve field. I just selected, I want totals and averages. So if I click OK, we can see that for all the records that are currently in a canceled status, we can see the total time for those records, and we can see the average time for those records. We can also do a little bit customize the report with our filters as well. So we can display it in different, what I also wanted to show you is when we have some of these groupings, and we have, what's the best way to say this? We have another option on how to display the data. We are displaying this in list or a standard display, but notice we can create a pie chart if we wanted to. Again, something nice for our management folks. They can just kind of get a glance and take a look. We have bar charts that we can use. So just an example, what did I select there? I don't know what I selected to make that go away. Just wanted to click and show you. All right, so our filters, we mentioned that you can have static filters, meaning I just want to see all actions that are completed. Now let's clear my regular list. All actions that are completed. I've hard-coded this into the filter. Completed actions, if I look at it, we're just saying that the real end date is not blank, and the action type is equal to an operation action or a closing action. But if I wanted to say, you know what, I want to select a date range, I want to see all actions, but I want to see them between the dates of, I don't know, January 1st at 12 o'clock. Oh, come on. Until now. I'll say display grid, and we can see within this only found two records within that date range. One thing that I was playing with that I think is really nice, and I haven't fully played with this, but I think this works pretty well, is, I actually created this filter called user defined search where I actually put a number of fields on here. So there's some options for this filter. We can either just run it and pull everything from the parent query, or we can define its creation date. We can search by status. So let's say I only want to find things that were on hold. I'll say equal to and display grid. And now I only see the items that are on hold. But again, this is a nice way for a user. It gives the users the ability to customize their searches or customize their reports when you use these dynamic fields. And by doing that, to configure that, I'm going to go into the report. I'm going to go into my filters. Where is it? Edit my filter. And notice you don't see all of those fields. We just have action type is equal to operation action or closing action, but we have a dynamics field button up in the upper right. And if I click that, that'll now show me, one, if I have any fields that are set as dynamic fields already, I have the ability to remove any if I want to. And I also have the ability to add any if I want to. Okay. I'll click OK. I just added country. Click OK and finish. And now we can see the country field showing up.